People keep having babies every single day, and one of my biggest sellers is nursery signs. Parents love walking into the nursery, seeing the sign up on the wall, the name that they chose for their kid, and remembering how to spell it. I'm Jevon Cheney of Cheney Concepts, and I spend my days making custom products out of things like wood, acrylic, and basically any other material that I can get my hands on. Now, I picked this project because I sell a ton of nursery signs, and let's be honest, babies aren't going out of style anytime soon. Which means this is one of those products that's always going to be in demand. So let's dive into how we're making it. So for this project, I grabbed a handful of items off of Johnson's Plastics Plus website to get us going. All right, so this first piece here is a piece of laser wood unfinished walnut. Now this has an MDF core and then walnut veneer on both sides. Item number 2, this is just clear acrylic, and as you can see, it comes with protection on both sides. Next, we have a sheet of 12 by 24 Rowmark color hues. Now this is actually passion fruit is the color, and it is 1/8 inch thick. Next, we have a sheet of cast acrylic. This is also an 1/8 inch thick, and this is yellow. Now, as you can see, it comes with the brown protection on both sides, which is great. Helps with preventing any kind of scratching. And last, we have a little sample piece here of some Color Hues quartz crystal. So this could be for little tiny accents and whatnot. But the nice thing here is Johnson's Plastics Plus offers a lot of different sizes depending on what you're doing. So if I have a lot of projects coming up, I'm gonna buy the bigger sheets, but if I really wanna kind of test out a piece, or if it fits in my laser better, I'm gonna grab some of the small stuff. Another nice thing that they do is they will label each piece for you. So not only do they have the item number, but it'll also tell you what the product is. Now, typically I will do the design first and then pick my materials, which is actually what I did, but I wanted to show you what I'm going to be using for this project. Now, I do all of my designing on the computer in Lightburn. So I take it from my brain and then I start playing with different shapes and different fonts and all the different things, which I'm gonna show you here in a second. But just know a nursery sign can be as basic as a simple square with some letters on it. It could be a circle with 3 different layers. There are endless options. But for this project, I wanted to do a couple different layers, some standoffs and wood with acrylic, and I'll show you. Let's jump on Lightburn. All right, here we are in Lightburn. That's just my design software of choice. And this is what the sign's going to look like. So we have multiple different layers here, and I kind of have it color coded based on the colors that I want to use for the actual sign. So the back is obviously walnut, which I showed you earlier, and I made some changes from when I showed you the material. So I think I'm going to like the contrast between the walnut and the black rather than clear for the first name. So what you see black here is going to be black cast acrylic, which I actually had some in stock, thankfully. And then the name itself is going to be out of like a smoky gray color. The middle name down here is out of that Color Hues passion fruit, and the flowers are out of the cast acrylic yellow. So now everything is going to be cut out except for my green layer here, which are just going to give me some crosshairs to be able to drill the screw through for the standoffs. I don't want to cut that out. I want to do that by hand, but I want to make sure that I have the position there. So once I get it on the laser and cut it, I'll make sure to show you that. And then you can see my steps of progression here. So I'm going to start with the backer, and this will all get cut out. Should be pretty quick. And I'm going to make sure that I do my crosshairs first before I push go. That way, again, if there's any shift, it doesn't move. After the backer is done, I'm then going to go to the name. We have a first name here. That should be pretty quick and easy. And then down here, we have the flowers. Again, I've got a giant sheet of the yellow. That should be super, super quick also. Now, I wanted to show you kind of a different way of doing it. So if you have limited space on a piece of stock or whatever, you might have to do what's called nesting. So this is what it looks like, but to save space, I actually compressed and moved, excuse me, move some things around. So another good example of this is you can make a shape of whatever size it is that you're going to be cutting out of. So for example, this is what? An 8 by 12, and I'm able to come in here and I can move each letter around accordingly to basically make sure I'm maximizing my space. Next down here, I like to use templates when aligning. I can do it by eye, but I prefer not to have to trust my eye. So again, these are going to be cut out, but these are going to be out of cardboard. So let me zoom in here and show you kind of what we're doing. Obviously, we want the entire shape. So when I cut this out of cardboard, it's going to fit exactly on the piece of acrylic that I have here. Now, you might be wondering, well, why do you have two lines here? You need to make a little bit of an offset, otherwise your acrylic pieces aren't going to fit into the template, and you run the risk of getting glue on the cardboard, and then it's a nightmare to try to clean. Yeah, I'm telling you from experience there. So the green is the actual size of the letters that are being cut out. I will get rid of that when I actually go to cut. But the red, I think it's a 0.025 offset is what I have found that works well. Again, every laser is going to be a little bit different, so you want to make sure you do some testing there. And then I like this method because all I'm going to do, which I'll show you, is put my template down, put a little bit of glue on the back of each piece, set it in there, and there's no guesswork, which can be very stressful if you do not have a template. Okay, now that we've went over the design, let's get to cutting. So for the cutting, I'm going to use my CO2 laser. Now for the project here, I have about 95% of all the different things are going to be cuts instead of engraves. Now, if you don't have a CO2 laser that is this large or powerful, don't panic. I actually have a 20-watt laser with a much smaller bed that I have been able to make a lot of signs from. It has enough power to get through that 1/8 inch acrylic. It just takes a few more passes and a little bit of creativity on the design part. Now, quick pro tip here, and this is why Johnson's Plastics Plus is the best. They put the protection on both sides, so when you go to slide things around on your honeycomb, you can and not scratch anything. So when you get it in, I highly recommend keeping all the protective pieces on until you're ready to engrave or cut. So one of the questions I get a lot by people that are new to engraving, especially if they're new to acrylic, is when to keep on the protection and when to take it off. So first, I always keep the back on. Almost 99% of the time that stays on. The front comes off depending on how detailed the piece is that's getting engraved or cut. For example, if you have a very intricate and detailed piece and you keep that protective layer on, you're going to have to weed or take off all the little tiny pieces of protection. If you're doing big letters, keep it on the entire time because those are easy to peel off after you get them glued onto the surface. Now, exact power and speed and all the different settings are very laser specific, so I'm not going to get into that. But I will tell you, when you are cutting, you want to make sure that you have your air assist on. When that air assist is on, it's going to give you a much cleaner cut. It's not going to make the edges bubble, and it's going to keep some of that smoke off of your product. Think of it like windshield wipers during a rainstorm. You could go without them, but it's not going to look pretty. Now, the order that we're actually cutting doesn't really matter for this one, especially since most of it are just cut pieces. Now, when you engrave first and then cut, you always want to make sure you do it in that order. Engrave, then cut. And the reason is when you have that air assist on during the cutting stage, it tends to move the pieces around because it's blowing air out, and when they become loose, they might fly away. So when they fly away, if you have to go back and engrave them, it'll be off. Just trust me, engrave, then cut. Now, like I said here, order doesn't really matter, but this is how I like to do it. I like to do my backer first, and then my next layer, my next layer, my next layer, and then my next layer. Because typically, the last layer usually has the smallest amount of pieces. So the next step is to get them on the laser and start cutting. Now, there are a couple of different things that you can look at before you put it in here, especially when working with wood and grain orientation. So while this is up on the wall, do you want it to look like this? Do you want it to look like this? And since it is a natural species, the back is going to be totally different just because that's how trees work. So I try to visualize what I want to see on the wall before I put it down in the right orientation to make the cut. And for this one, I think I like the darker part, especially after we apply some finish. So we're going to put it in like this. I do have a 90-degree stop there, so I know that everything is parallel and perpendicular. All right, here we go for some of the lettering. Nice clean cut. There you go. All right, now it's going to go in our gray. And this is cast acrylic. In my opinion, it cuts the best. So here we go. Okay, now pro tip, get that out of the way. Take a Sharpie and you're going to label the front and the top of each one, because depending on different fonts and letters, you do not want to get them flipped over, upside down, all the right things. So I just go like this. There we go. Now all of them are labeled, so when they pop out and they flip over, just in case it's not symmetrical, it's going to line up on my template. Okay, get her in position and go. All right, so here we go. We have all of our parts cut out, and I've got the stencils cut out. I did that off camera, so let's get ready to assemble. All right, now it's time to do some assembly. So here we have our floating piece, essentially, and then this is our template, or our stencil. So the first thing I'm gonna do is remove the protective adhesive here. I'm just gonna peel that off. There's a little bit of gloss on there. Okay, I wanna make sure that I remember that's the top. This is symmetrical, but just for good practice, make sure you know where that is. Next, we're gonna put that there, but we need some tape. So, get a piece of tape here, and then I'm going to just set it on the side here, and then just by feel, wrap that up and over like that. Make sure everything is nice and flush. All right, so then we're going to glue on our letters here. So same thing, peel off the protective back. There you can see that nice gray color. All right, and then we're just going to take some CA glue, and you don't need to overdo it. This is not going outside. So a little dab there, 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 there. Okay. Now here is a pro tip. So what I'll do is I'll put it on a piece of cardboard just to get it to not smear. And then you just use your stencil here. Put it in, hold for just a second, and you're good to go. All right, so now that all of them are on there, what we're gonna do is just take off our tape and get that nice reveal. On to the next part. All right, so what I ended up doing here was actually engraving a little bit just to recess, and we're gonna be able to just put the letters in there with a little bit of glue. There we go. All right, so for the top flower part, I have decided not to make a stencil. I don't usually like doing it this way, but because of all the intricate detail, and I didn't want to mess around with the design. So what we're going to do is we're going to do it by eye, and this is how I used to do it for a very long time. So what we're going to do is use a straight edge. Now, it doesn't have to be a fancy one like this, but something that you can reference here and make a straight edge. And then by eye, I'm going to be able to see my distance on both sides. Now, just because this can get intense sometimes, especially when you're moving fast and doing glue, so I'm actually going to just tape the ruler right here to the board, just in case we start to get a little too fired up here. That way it doesn't move, I don't say bad words on camera, and everything turns out great. Now, I also had, my design was a little too thin, so when I was kind of getting some of these little tiny intricate details out, some of these little flowers snapped off. Now, luckily, I was able to keep them, so I think I can salvage it, but I'm gonna have to look back at the design to make sure I put them in the right spot, especially since I'm not a botanist. There we go. There we go. Okay, so next we need to drill our holes right here. Now, the way that this really is supposed to go is it's going to go directly into the wall, and then the screws that come with the kit go through the board here into the wall. Well, I'm not going to do that. I have some much shorter screws just for presentation sake, and then when it actually gets delivered, I'll give them the longer screws. Okay, so with my scrap board underneath, that way we don't get a bunch of blowout, I have an 1/8 inch drill bit, and this is why we did the crosshairs right there. So that's going to give us our place that's, everything will be lined up. Now, you want to make sure that you do this correctly because you kind of only get one shot here. Otherwise, you're going to be filling holes. Now, I recommend a brad point bit. So as you can see right there on the top, it is pointed so it will find its way in between those crosshairs. All right, so here are the parts of a standoff. You have the screw that actually is going to go in the wall, and then it also comes with some anchors. You have the little threaded insert here that is going to go into this and this, which is kind of what keeps everything together. But the way you assemble it, this is the bottom. It's a little bit thicker, and the screw will go in like that. And then you take your threaded insert part like this. Screw it all the way in. And then this will go through our acrylic piece, and this will go on top. So then that acrylic will get sandwiched in there. Now they have a bunch of different diameters, some different colors. You can get some that are LED, lots of different options. I will put them down below. All right, so for the makeshift here, I actually took a couple pieces of the scrap from here, and I'm gonna actually just give it a little bit of dimension, and then when they go to attach it to their wall with the longer screws, they can just take these little ones out or I'll go and install it. But here we go. So we've got all of that lined up. Kit comes like this. All right, so we've got all of our pieces laid out. Now, usually I do recommend putting them like in a little bowl or something because these little boogers want to roll everywhere. But here we go. So screw, longer piece. This goes in there like that. Take your drill with just a Phillips head or whatever screw you use. And we're just going to snug that down. Okay, and then you're gonna take your threaded piece. Go ahead and tighten it all the way. And then just rinse and repeat 3 more times. Now on these inserts, if you see, one side actually has a place for a hex key. I try to keep those up just in case you need to tighten them after they're in or the sign is up. I believe that's what they're designed for. Just wanted to throw that out there. Oh, and we still don't have all of that off, but this is kind of the moment of truth here to make sure that all of your prep work and your design did what it's supposed to, and we have everything lined up. So, whew, that's a big relief. And then once you tighten this down, it'll take a little bit of this sag out. There we go, I can feel it doing what it's supposed to. Okay, now the last thing to do, well, there's a couple things, but we need to take off the protective outside thing here. All right, clean that up a little bit. Little compressed air actually will take that a long way. And here it is, the finished nursery sign. Clean, colorful, and a product the parents are absolutely going to love. This project shows how versatile Rowmark and acrylic can be when you start layering materials. You can scale this design up or down, swap colors, or change fonts to make it unique for each client. And the best part, it's one of those projects that never goes out of style. Parents will always want nursery signs. So if you're a maker looking for something profitable and fun to add to your lineup, this is a great place to start. So grab some Rowmark, fire up your laser, and give it a shot. At the very least, you'll have a sign that reminds you of what your kid's name is and how to spell it. Now, if you'd like to see more of what I do, you can find me on all the social platforms at Cheney Concepts. Don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. I'm always eager to help any other makers out there. And thank you so much for watching. I hope this gave you some inspiration for your next project. Happy making!